from the News Channel 5 network. This is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. The 2022 midterm elections are just a few months away. Historically, the party in power in the White House loses seats in the Congress. What will happen this year? On Inside Politics this week, our guest is the chairman of the Tennessee Democratic Party, Hendrell Remus. We'll ask him his thoughts about what will happen both nationally and here in Tennessee. That's particularly important, especially in light of the redistricting law that was recently passed by the Republican-controlled Tennessee legislature this week. Mr. Remus, thank you for joining us again. Appreciate you having on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
There have been few times in American history where a party in power in the White House hasn't lost seats in the midterm elections. In some cases, those midterm elections have seen sizable losses for the party in power. Given the sharply declining poll numbers for President Biden, shouldn't Democrats be preparing for the worst if they're going to lose majorities in both houses of Congress?
Well, I believe that Democrats should be preparing to deliver. We've got a few months before elections of 2022 begin, and I think we've got a number of great initiatives out there. If we put them forward, get them passed, and go out and sell them to the American people, we might be able to avoid some of the historic, as President Obama once said, shellacking that comes along with the president in power during their first term. So I think there's a lot of hope for Democrats, but we've got to make sure that we're actually able to go out and deliver for the American people and then articulate what we've done and why we've done it. Because historically, President Biden has got a lot of things done in this first year in office, not just his first term, but his first year in office that many presidents had not. So I'm hopeful that if we can get some more big pieces of legislation passed and go out and sell it the right way, we'll be fine in November.
But is the key to that breaking down those pieces of legislation? I mean, the Build Back Better bill has been stuck in Congress. You think breaking it out in pieces is going to be better? And particularly in the voting rights area, you can't change the filibuster at this point. Is there a way to break that down that's still meaningful and have voting legislation that will mean something?
Absolutely. I'm fully in favor of the Build Back Better plan. And if we have to pass it in one chunk or break it out into pieces to get it passed, I think all of the elements of that bill will really truly help to have an immediate impact on the lives of American families. So I think if we have to break it up, we should break it up, get pieces that are most consistent with the public's perception of what we should be doing passed, and start helping to make people's lives better. On the side of voting rights, obviously, the not being able to carve out a change for the filibuster on voting rights was a huge blow to Democrats. I think there's a whole lot of readjusting that we have to do, but I think that has to be a top priority if we're going to make sure that everybody has equal access and can go to the polls and cast their votes and keep our democracy going, because we've seen Republican legislators really take the X to voting rights across states across this nation. So hugely concerned about that, especially when it relates to minority voters.
Another headwind for Democrats is all the states are redrawing their congressional lines and their legislatures based on the 2020 census. Republicans control a lot of those legislatures, including here in Tennessee. Isn't that a problem that's going to probably make Democrats go into minority, at least in the House?
It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. What it does, it creates a dynamic where Democrats are going to have to go out and really appeal to voters who traditionally wouldn't be in our wheelhouse. And I believe that the Democratic policies and agendas and the agenda that the president has set truly does go at the heart of what families and individuals and business owners and homeowners in this country can benefit from. So I think we've got a tall task ahead of us in going out delivering on what we stand for and on our policies and on our agenda. Obviously, Republicans have done their part to make redistricting a national effort to regain control in Congress, and that's unfortunate that they've decided to try to pick their voters versus letting voters pick their representatives. But we've got to go out, we've got to make the case, and we've got to be very consistent in making sure we're organizing folks, registering them to vote, and then turning them out to vote.
The congressional redistricting line here, or the new law that's going to be in law very soon here in Tennessee, divides the Democratic 5th District historically into 3 different districts, all of which would have Republican majorities. Your party's talking about filing a lawsuit. How soon can we expect you to be in court about this matter?
Well, we've been crystal clear about our intent. Once the governor puts his signature on these maps, we're going to court.
Are you going to go to court against not just the congressional plan, but also against the state House plan and the state Senate plan? And are you doing it basically because you think it's racial gerrymandering?
Yeah, I mean, we're challenging, we will challenge the validity of all three of these maps because, you know, what Republicans have shown us is that they've been willing to grasp hold to a national city splitting agenda where if you look at some of the precinct by precinct data with surgical precision, they went in and I wouldn't say just racially gerrymandered, but absolutely silenced minority voters in some of these districts. So we're going to be challenging the validity of all three maps.
The Supreme Court has sort of said, gotten out of challenging these things or overturning them, at least on their level, if it's just they see it as politics. Race might be one different matter for them in this. There's already been a ruling in Alabama that overturned threw it out down in the federal courts down there because, again, they didn't think they were fair to African-American voters. Is that going to be part of your pleadings here in Tennessee?
We're going to look at every effort. The case in Alabama gives us a glimmer of hope because we're seeing some of the same trends in the maps that these Republican legislators carved up and drew up here in Tennessee. So we're hopeful, but I think we've got a compelling case to make to the courts, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to at least get some type of movement in the courts.
The Republicans in the legislature say they followed all the voting rights acts that are in force here in the country. They followed all the rules to do that. What they've done is fair. How are you going to prove them wrong?
What they've done is not fair. I mean, it's simple, and we'll be able to articulate that in our court case. Because if you really look at these maps, if you look at the way that minority voters have been silenced, if you look at the precision that Republicans took in going into districts and carving them up in a way where they absolutely jumped over minority precincts to keep more conservative, more white voters locked into districts to make sure that their Republican representatives were held to strongholds. So look, it's going to be a very expensive and a very contentious fight, but I think we can make a compelling case in the courts, one that we haven't made in the past. And I think if you look at precedents of what has happened in Alabama and Ohio and North Carolina and Pennsylvania, we're going to make a case that I think will benefit Democrats and benefit people because ultimately that's what this is about. This isn't just about politics. This is about making sure that we're looking out for people, and they've got to make sure, and that means making sure that they have representatives who can actually truly represent them, who don't despise their communities just because they're more progressive or more urban or more minority.
Tennessee's Democratic Party Chairman Hendrell Remus is our guest on Inside Politics. Back to continue our conversation with the chairman in a busy week for Tennessee politics after you watch these messages.
This is a Storm 5